is logged into their Lumi device. And what a Lumi device is basically your device, the device that you brought, your phone, your internet, your computer, your tablet. And if you can just get to a browser, an internet browser, and navigate to the address that was in the materials, you will be all set to log in using your credentials. So that each one of you will have the ability to vote. And it also is the way that we monitor who is here, counting our quorum. So we want you to do that because we're testing ourselves how we will measure this at our business meeting. I'm going to pause for just 1 second because it reminded me of a question.
Hardly even hear it.
Do you want to ask?
Okay. So if you have any questions about your voting device, you can ask someone else, perhaps there, who has already done so. If you have any questions for us in the next 10 minutes, you can unmute yourself and ask me.
Okay, we have a question.
Yes, hello.
How do we get rid of Google and just get Chrome because they're combined?
How do we get rid of Google?
Irene, I'm not sure we can hear you very well. Whoever was talking will have to get closer to the computer that the Zoom is on.
Oh, Ann, can you hear me?
No. Okay, we're having difficulty connecting Google instead of Google Chrome or vice versa.
Okay, so are you talking about the voting device, Irene?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so Google Chrome is the better browser to use. So you'll want to use Google, but Chrome, but not Internet Explorer, I think is the tip. And just to confirm, is Irene's device the only one for St. Alban?
We've got two though.
I mean, for the Zoom?
We have two.
Okay, we want to make it one. Will you guys choose which one will work better for you?
Okay.
And then we'll rename you. Thank you. Here comes Osprey. It might be a better audio situation for you with that as well. Okay, and another thing to remember is the whole point of doing this 6 weeks before convention is so we can all decide what we like and don't like about our setup. So if you're like me, have a little thing of Post-it notes and start taking notes on what you want to tweak between now and October. And if you want some advice in between now and October, Garland has tons of it. And so you can call us and we can help with what we've learned as well. But the goal for tonight is to be a first pass and get through all of the technical questions and tweaks and know that you have a way to know what it is that you want to tweak before October's actual business meeting. So we'll be limited in how much we can support you individually during the next hour, but rest assured that we love to geek it up with you after this and talk about it for the next 6 weeks before we start in October. So I'm going to, looks like Martha, do I need to ask any questions regarding naming? Do you have any outstanding unidentifieds?
Hi, Anne, when you have a moment.
Okay. Mother Vicky, hold on just 1 second. There's a email, someone has logged in with the email address 3catcrew@gmail.com. Could you unmute yourself and let us know which congregation you represent?
We are St. Augustine's.
St. Augustine's. Okay, and do you have, are you the one Zoom device for the group? Zoom device for the group?
No. Not at this point.
So we'll want to choose one from your group so that there's one Zoom login. And whichever one you all choose, everyone.
Yeah,
all the
I don't
others
have a
log off
camera
and they can-
actually operable on this computer for 3Cat Cruise, so we're gonna have to use somebody else's.
Okay. I'm going to mute you, but that's probably what we're going to want to work through is make sure we have just one for St.
Yeah,
Augustine.
let me do that.
Thank you.
Hi, Ann,
And
Mother
Barb?
Vicky St.
So
David.
it's pointed at the mute.
Hi, Mother Vicky. What can I help you with?
Just checking in.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And Paul Congo, which church are you?
Actually, that's St. Augustine's. They borrowed my
Okay,
computer.
Okay, so we'll use you as the St. Augustine Zoom.
Yeah, do you want me to
Martha, did you get
rename
that?
it or if you got it?
Paul Congo is the St. Augustine,
Right. I can rename it.
and Cat Crew's gonna log
Yeah.
off. The-
Hi, Ann. Christy from Holy Trinity, when you have a
Hi,
moment.
Holy. We can hear you, Holy Trinity. You look great.
Great. We have one person whose Lumi credentials are not being accepted at login.
Great. Would you please email that person's name to convention@episcopalswfl.org and Tana will respond?
Will do. Thank you.
If anyone else has any questions related to the username and passwords for the voting, also just email convention@episcopalswfl.org and Tana and Marilyn will get you a resolution started. All right. Trinity. Got everyone muted. So you're 4 minutes away from the start of the program. So this is your chance to run to the restroom because it's going to get good at 7. And Martha, in some way, or Garland, or maybe we study the tape later, but we'll be able to take attendance of the congregations. Okay, thank you. I'm just going to make an adjustment myself here.
Yep, so. Adam's here.
You got 'em. Okay, mine's not working.
Yep.
Still got 3 minutes. All right. Everyone's looking good. So again, you have your instructions for Lumi login you're probably working on or you're all set. If you have any questions while we're talking regarding anything logistical, email convention@episcopalswfl.org and our team will respond to you individually. One of the first things we're going to do at 7 o'clock is continue the logistical instructions, but for the studio here, you know what that means. Is that you, Garland? Is this your? Okay. Garland's willing to give out his text number. Okay. So yeah, if you want to talk to Garland about something, it's 941-981-2320. So again, also a reminder, we are now streaming live on Boxcast, which is available on our diocesan website and on our Facebook page. So if you have anyone else who wants to be to watch this convocation, any guest or anyone who's interested, they can just go to our website and it'll be right there and they're watching along with us. Can't forget Iona Hope. Also, we seem to largely all be here. At least we're noticing a very large percentage of us. So fantastic work on setting up your congregation Zoom sites. Thank you so very much. While we've been doing the same thing here at DaySpring, and I'd like to start while we're still waiting for our last few congregations to join us by orienting you to who is here that you don't see. We have our diocesan staff, and if you like, are we ready to do a pan of the room? Okay, go ahead, Bob. So we have here at the front desk, the stage, myself, the bishop, and Canon Norman. And then looking back and around, you'll see our support team safely distanced flanking on the right side of the program center. And I'm not sure if you're sharing that particular feed. There you go. And then on the other side of the room are all of the wires, and Phil Dean and his team, which are using the TriCaster equipment to give you the good audio visual quality that you're seeing, but also going to our convention, we'll be playing videos and doing all sorts of things. So we're very grateful to have their expertise and confidence as we go through all of this. You recognize DaySpring. We're in our program center multi-purpose room right now. You can rent out this room for a convention of any organization.
No, not true.
If we're available. But we usually fit 300 people in this room, and right now we have 18 safely. But as you can see, we're able to share with you over and beyond. Also, we have been working on the voting technology with our colleague Adam from Lumi, and so he is with us as well in a variety of technical ways throughout this program as we're practicing our voting tonight. So that is all of us who are here. I've introduced the crew that is on site. There are three other individuals who will be joining us at convention, the October date. And that is Chancellor Ted Tripp, who is one of these small boxes here. And you can wave your hand, Ted, there you go. And Parliamentarian Michael Durant. And both of them will be here live for the meeting. And for now, they will be in their Chancellor boxes. One of the other things I need to do briefly here is turn over my host abilities to Martha. And Martha is going to continue to admit any other congregations that join us from here on out. We mailed you the guidebook. We tested our studios. One other best practice, if you haven't done it already, if you're looking at many, many little boxes, which is called the gallery view, you may prefer to set it to speaker view, and that would enable you to see the speaker rather than all 78 of the individual boxes. You want to locate or designate one person who is nearby the Zoom device so that when we get to the point of raising our hands, that you are able to have that person be the one who does that on the laptop that is the device that is the Zoom. And again, both tonight, both delegates and alternates are able to vote. We are practicing. These are practice votes, so they are not going to change the life of the diocese officially going forward. But we want everyone, even if they're an alternate at this point, to have practice with the voting technology.
You're being waved at.
Would you like me to be closer? Further?
No, St. Luke's is waved.
All right, let's ask St. Luke if they want to ask a question. It sounds like you see someone waving.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, no, they
Yeah. Again, at this point, if anyone has questions, the best bet's going to be to email convention@episcopalswfl.org, because we're monitoring that email and they're not the ones presenting, so we can keep going forward. And so with that, we're recording on all three of our streams, Zoom, Boxcast, and everywhere. Then I think we are ready to officially start, and we'll turn it over to Bishop Smith.
Good evening, everybody. It's interesting to say it's so good to see you all of you when you're not actually here in the same room. What we are dealing with is the fact that we, as the Diocese of Southwest Florida, have it in our constitution that the diocesan convention will meet annually. And the convocation, which is listed in the canons of the diocese, is listed as a necessary meeting before the convention. And so we are doing the first part of what is a requirement for the diocesan convention with the meeting of the convocation. Although this is not a business meeting, it is a necessary meeting of information to get ready for the diocesan convention, which will, excuse me, happen in about 6 weeks. So I thank all of you for gathering in this new and exciting coronavirus way. I do want to say just one thing besides the thank you for making this special effort of rehearsal for the convention, which I never knew that Ann Vickers could talk without stopping for 1 entire hour. And so I think that her next career is probably going to be in radio or television talk show host. So that was pretty good. You've already been introduced to our always helpful and benevolent Ted Tripp, the Chancellor of the Diocese, and Michael Durant is taking on the role of parliamentarian because Jim Park, who has been doing it for, 14 or 15 years, can no longer continue that role. And so we are thankful for his many years of service to the diocese, and thank you for Michael Durant for stepping in for that purpose. I want to just give you a couple of pieces of information. One, as you are aware, that when we meet for diocesan convention, we always have a number of workshops on Friday for the participation of all of the delegates interested in a variety of topics. So we're not doing that this year. What we're making available are workshops that will be following for the next 4 Wednesdays in a row. And the workshops are going to be about the diaconate, about the baptismal covenant, about healing, and about the effects of COVID-19 on our communities. And so if you read the information in the convention booklets that you have received, you will find that information. And now you don't have to choose. You can go to all of them. And we do hope that you do. Also, during the convention, the Constitution of the diocese tells that the bishop will be in charge of the worship for the divine service. That is the language that is used. And it doesn't specify what that divine service is going to be. So rather than try and create something that has to do with Holy Eucharist for all of us to try and work our way through, we're just going to have evening prayer that is done beautifully this year, and that will be Friday evening at 5 o'clock. So as we continue for this rehearsal time, I want to offer a prayer, which I found pretty helpful in a book that has to do with an anthology of Anglican prayers, and it's pretty thick, representing 500 years of people writing prayers so that they would be able to remember them and be able to pass them on. I found one by Charles Henry Brent, who was the bishop who ordained my grandfather in 1914, just 4 years before the last global pandemic. And he was the Bishop of Western New York, and so was the predecessor to Bishop Garrison, who helps out and wonderfully in this diocese. And Charles Henry Brent is the author of the third prayer of mission in the Book of Common Prayer that we find in morning prayer and evening prayer. And here's a prayer that I think he probably wrote when he was feeling upset about something. And this is old style language. I'm going to read it as is, and it's a good prayer for us as we live through this time of intensity and yet do whatever it takes to get together and do what's necessary for the high functioning of the diocese. So again, thank you for participating so boldly. And now let us pray. Lord, undertake for me. Quiet my selfish clamoring. Be thou my sufficiency. All things happen according to thy ordering. And if thou orderest my life, there can be no room for anything but joy when thy decree goeth forth, for thy ordering is alone secure. No planning or scheming of mine will mar thy plan for me. Nothing remains for me but to fit myself into thy plan. And so shall I reach my highest good and find opportunity for my highest, fullest service. Lord, be thou my peace. Lay hold of my faculties and train them to thy use. Inspire me with undying devotion to thee and thy will. I am afraid of my weakness. Let it be a vessel to hold thy strength. Let me not break, O God. Fill me with divine power. I pray this in Christ's name. Amen. Now I hand the microphone back to Anne.
Okay, great. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about the rules of order for an electronic meeting. So Bishop and Richard and I have what was just released September 1st, which was yesterday, the new Robert's Rules of Order with the electronic meeting supplement included. And that supplement was distributed via PDF, I think 3 or 4 weeks ago. And we have incorporated that into your materials as supplemental rules of order for our meeting. So when you look at, when we get to convention, the very first thing we are going to do is approve the agenda and the rules of order for an electronic meeting. And so you have that in your book on pages 14 and 15. And that agenda specifically is on page 8. So I want you to be sure to, the agenda will probably look familiar, but the next 2 pages, the rules of order, which are on 14 and 15. The rules of convention on the left look similar, but on the right are all new, which come directly from scenario A of Robert's Rules of Order's 12th edition, released yesterday. But specifically, I tailored to our situation. And so a couple highlights from that I'd like you to be aware of, and then I'm going to stop this share, is that we measure the presence of a quorum by the tally of who are logged in. So if we have, let's say, 350 eligible members of convention, and our quorum per our bylaws is defined as 50% of that, we're looking to establish a quorum by 175 of you logged in. So right now, there's 145 of us logged in. So you can see why this practice is important, so that we can ensure that we are able to get the credentials to each of the voting members so that they are literally able to log in and establish their attendance at our convention. So what we'll be doing is checking the tape, so to speak, and understand who was able to log in, who wasn't. But I'd like to, at this point, just reiterate the importance of the logging into the Lumi device when we get to our actual convention. Secondly, we have a scripted agenda. It is literally a script, so that we could technically present 14 motions, most of them procedural, and 6 elections. So when we wrote all of that out and practice it and play it out on a timeline, it will last until 1 o'clock with 2 15-minute breaks. And we heard from our feedback with the vestry retreat, which was another large day via Zoom, that you don't like long breaks in the middle and having to come back. So with the 1 o'clock projected time, we felt it would be best to just power through. And that is what that's how our agenda is set to be managed. If we notice through the day that we're behind schedule, we'll indicate that to you. I don't think we will be, because again, it's a script, but I do want to so that you can plan for your day on October 17th. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't allow for speaking from the floor. In fact, that's a big part of what a business meeting is. And so rules of order related to that are included in these supplemental rules. And the way that that happens with our configuration, with our 78 Zoom sites, is that we will use imagine that you each have a microphone in your space that is a convention microphone. And we would call on you by congregation microphone. So in Punta Gorda, we would have called to whoever rose to microphone 1 or number 2. Now we have 78 microphones, and we would call on whomever rose to speak. The way that you would choose to speak, to raise your hand to speak, is to use your Zoom function raise hand feature. Now, right now is the very first practice skill for the evening. And what we would like you to do is to practice using your Zoom functionality to raise your hand, which is a blue hand located at the bottom left-hand corner of your participant panel. So pick the person who knows Zoom the best, have them walk over to that device and raise their blue hand. And at the same time, you can look, everyone can see how the hands are being raised and marked, and which churches have hands raised, and therefore they all are saying they want to speak. Now, right now, we want all of you to test it so that you know how to rise to the microphone, how to raise your hand. When we're at the business meeting of convention, this becomes our speaker queue, QUE, and that is how we will manage the calling on whomever is called by the chair to speak. The bishop is the one who calls on the queue to speak, and we will unmute you when you're called on. And that is how we will interact, kind of like we did in that first hour of practice time, except a lot more order related to it. So everyone will be muted, you raise your hand, and then when we're done, we can clear the queue. And I need to know how to do that. Martha, you could do it, or we can... You can lower your hand. But if you don't lower your hand, we'll eventually clear the queue and lower the hands for you. But it looks like you all scored very well on the first practice skill of raising your hand. The last, if there are, like I said, we've taken great care to ensure that our resolutions are straightforward, that there's not something that's likely to require a lot of debate or conversation. You'll hear about that when Canon Richards presents them to you. But if there were to be, looking at these rules of order, those motions would need to be written out. And if you had something that you were making in a motion, that would need to be in writing. And we're going to use the Zoom chat feature for submitting that in writing to the secretary, which is myself. Another rule of order that is unique to a virtual convention involves the nominations from the floor. Normally, we would allow for nominations from the floor for our elections, literally from the floor, like a minute before the election. due to our voting technology and just wanting to, feel in control of what we're doing here, we've made the supplemental rule recommendation that we close the nominations from the floor 1 week prior to convention. So right now, there's a full slate of nominees, and there still can be nominations from the floor tonight, tomorrow, all the way through 1 week before October 17th. But at that point, we will close the nomination, and that allows us to set up the technology for our ballots for the elections on the day of the voting. That is the last of the supplemental rules that are presented on page 14 and 15. And those will be the rules that we will adopt as a convention as the first vote on October 15th, 16th, 17th, October 17th. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Canon Norman to talk about resolutions.
Thank you very much, Canon Vickers. Yes, if you would turn to page 25 and 31 of your guide, you'll notice that we have before us some resolutions that have been referred to us from General Convention, the 79th General Convention of the Episcopal Church. There are 9 resolutions there. I commend them to your reading and just be aware of them. And then we also will be hearing a second reading of 2 resolutions regarding amendments to our own Constitution that we acted on last year. And this year at convention, it will be our second required reading for those to take effect. And those are on pages 22 through 24. So do read those in advance so that you're well informed and are aware of what will be before us. So now I think it'd be great if we would practice our vote for a resolution. You will now see a slide coming up in just a second with the resolution for our consideration this evening. And our friend Adam will be posting that. This is why we do the practice. Here we go. You'll see before you a slide with a resolution for our consideration. It's a resolution regarding DaySpring cookies. So my friends, the vote is now open. At this time, please navigate to the Lumi platform on your device to cast your vote. Up until now, you've been participating by watching the Zoom screen on your computer. On the Lumi site right now, you should see the question before you with the options yes and no. If you make a selection that you wish to change, you may simply select the alternative choice. You may do this as many times as you wish, up until the time that the vote is closed. The vote will be open for another 30 seconds. Just a few more seconds. So if you have not cast your vote on Lumi, please do so. Okay, so our voting is now closed. And I will ask Adam to please show the report of the vote. So yes, we did pass the resolution that an assortment of DaySpring cookies as parting gifts at our convention this year should be conveyed. Thank you very much for that. Next, I'd like to draw your attention to our elections and talk to you about our process for our elections. So if you would take a moment and turn to page 16 through 21 of your guide, you'll notice that we have elections A through F. Now, elections A and B we must administer an election due to the number of candidates that we presently have. Now, when we come to elections C through F, if we receive no further nominations, and as you heard Canon Vickers talk about, that we have up until a week before convention to receive nominations from the floor. So if no further nominations from the floor come to us, then we can move to elect by acclamation. So we've already practiced voting for a resolution. Now is the time for us to practice voting for an election. So in just a moment, Adam will be putting a slide up. And it's a slide providing us an opportunity to elect 2 favorite hymns from a group of 6 hymns from our hymnal. The vote is now open. At this time, I'd ask you again to please navigate to your Lumi platform to cast your vote. Up until now, you've been participating by watching the Zoom screen on your computer. And on the Lumi site right now, you should see the election to be made with a possible of 5 hymns to elect from. You may select 2. As you make your selections, the hymn will turn from white to yellow, and if all the hymns you select are in yellow, please hit the send button at the bottom of your Lumi screen. If you make a selection you wish to change, please click on that answer again until it changes from yellow back to white. And at that time, you can make a new selection. Once again, once all the answers align with your intentions, please hit the send button. The vote will now be open 1 more minute. Right, the voting is now closed. And now Adam's going to post our results. So the top 2 hymns are the Church's One Foundation with 127 votes. And coming in second is Love Divine, All Loves Excelling. And at this time, I'm going to turn it back to Canon Ann Vickers.
Our practice vote did very similarly. Love that vote. Okay, well, great. Yes.
I'm sorry, this is Ted. I saw a question on chat that I think deserves an answer, which is, were you required to vote for 2 hymns, or could you vote for less than 2 hymns? And that's important when we come to the election, because under our canons, if you have 2 slots available, you may cast up to 2 votes, but you are not required to cast 2 votes. So I just want to clarify, if you have 2 selections, you're free to cast up to 2 votes, but you are not required to cast 2 votes.
Thank you, Chancellor. Yes, that is what we would call in the prayer book a May rubric.
Excellent. If there are any other questions about the voting test examples that we just did tonight or in general, we want to remind you to email convention@episcopalswfl.org either now or tomorrow or any other point before convention, and we'll give you a solid answer back. I also would like to report that through that exciting voting practice, we have increased our count to 268 logged in users. I, for one, feel much better now, so thank you. That would be more than a quorum, and we can proceed with our business session. So good job getting everyone logged in, and you'll just come back and do the same thing on the day of convention. So next, we're going to go back to the usual of orienting you to the plain old materials of the guidebook. And the good thing about this 52nd annual convention is, our methods, our process, some of our slides even are very similar to the past couple years. We haven't yet announced how many of you are brand new, but I'm going to guess based on the last 8 years that it's about 30 to 40% of you are new. So it is important to orient you all to the framework of your role as a delegate to our convention. And so this is where the PowerPoint slides that I have are available. And I'm going to speak, but not put the slides up. And then just because you can look at those later, and every once in a while I might alternate and show, but we want to make sure that you can see what we're doing here. But there are 5 reports to convention that we're required to give each of you more than 10 days before the convention itself. And so that includes the report of the audit for the diocese and DaySpring, and you can find that on the website that you're on, the diocesan website. You can download the audit. The second thing is the report of the activities of diocesan council in between since the last convention, and you can find that in the form of the diocesan journal, also available on the website, or in one of these books that you might you might see in the bookshelf of your church office. Those minutes go into our archive materials and reflect all of the decisions made in between conventions. Now, the budget process it starts in May when we start receiving from you the parochial reports of your 2019 activity. And so we proof those congregation financial statements, and that becomes the sum of that becomes the basis for the revenue for our budget. So that starts as early as March through May, and then May through June and August, the Finance Committee reviews different drafts, leading to, along with a report from the Diocesan Fund Board, to a report to Council in August. And then Council approves a diocesan budget and a spring budget to present to you in the book that you're holding right now. So pages 33 through 46, if you want to have those, in front of you, are the numbers and details for everything that I'm going to, at a high level, discuss right now. This gives you 6 weeks to look through, educate, understand what might be different from prior years, what might be interesting to you, what you might have just come up with a new question about. And we do want you to ask those questions and interact with us being myself, any of the staff, any of the Finance Committee or Fund Board members for that matter, any council member. They've all heard the full detailed presentation and would love to talk about the diocesan budget when you're tired of talking about everything else going on in the world. But it does include a parochial report analysis comparing 2019 back to the prior year, 2018. And it includes the exact apportionment schedule that funds this 2021 budget. Now, the apportionment schedule, which is pages 42 through 45, not only has a definition of what apportionment is, it has an exhibit to describe how it's calculated and how it relates to the parochial report. And then it has the schedule by church name of the amounts for the 2021 apportionment, which funds the budget of the diocese. And you can credit Holy Innocents for being the first church to call and ask for the apportionment schedule yesterday, the day before Convocation. Thank you very much, because they need it, as you all will, for formulating your budget for 2021 as well. So it's never too soon to start budgeting for the next year. And you can now do that with the book that you have, and particularly pages 42 and 43 that have the apportionment expense coming from the church to the diocese. The other component of our income is based on our endowments. And the diocesan endowments have grown because of the market. They've even bounced back from this earlier part of the year since last year, and continue to fund ministries of all different types. The spending rule for 2021 that was approved by the Endowment Fund Board of Diocese was 4.4%. That was determined through the careful analysis of a 3-year average return, which, by the way, is 5.3%, adjusted for inflation of 1.7%, and the fees that we pay on our endowment of 52 basis points. And that justified that, considering the conservative spending rates of the prior years as well, justified the 4.4 rate that was approved. Once that rate is approved, 4.4, it's applied to the average market balance over the last 12 quarters, and it comes up with a number, 696,000. And then it's pro rata applied to each of the purposes of the sub-accounts of those funds. A big part of our diocesan endowment are our DEMP churches, the Diocesan Endowment Management Program. That is 36 churches who co-invest with the diocesan endowment, and therefore would utilize the same spending rule to determine the amount that they will receive, that you, 36 of you, will receive in your 2021 distributions for your budget. So this decision is not only for funding the diocesan budget lines, but also keeping in mind the needs and the awareness of our co-investors, you, 36 of you who are involved in the DEMP. So once we get through convention, those amounts would be distributed and inform your budgeting as well. A couple points on the operating income, and then I'm going to have a couple points on the expenses. Actually, the couple points on the income I just said. There's the based on parochial reports, based on the spending rule, and the third piece would be program revenue for our events that we administer through the diocesan budget. On the expense side, I'd like to tell you about the things that have changed compared to prior years. We have the same chart of accounts, we have the same format, but we do see things change from year to year. So I'm going to share the screen here and just identify some of the talking points related to the expenses that are different than prior year. First of all, and our biggest expense as a percentage is our diocesan staff. For the year 2021, we are budgeting 0 staff salary increases, for obvious reasons related to the pandemic and the uncertainty that still extends potentially into the next year. In addition, the 2 positions that are outstanding, the executive assistant to the bishop and the USF chapel positions, they're still budgeted and will be filled. But until we are in the position of being able to gather both as a staff in the office and at USF, we might delay those starting dates a bit longer. The grants to congregations represent the second largest chunk of our expenses. And what that means are dollars that go directly back to congregation budgets for various reasons. And we have increased those amounts to consider the unknown circumstances that still might play out in 2021. For example, an allowance for uncollectible apportionment, our assumption had always been 5%. Now it's going to be 6%. So that just gives us a cushion, an ability, a lever to assist if we need to in the new year, maybe similar to what we did in this year. The third biggest chunk is apparently the beyond the diocese piece. The biggest chunk that goes to outside of the diocese would be the funding to the budget of the Episcopal Church. And that amount is actually down from year to year slightly, just under $500,000. We have a constant amount of funding to our 2 church plants, St. Paul's Wesley Chapel and Parish Episcopal Church. And it might look different if you're perusing the operating budget line item detail, because we are transitioning in January, now that St. Paul's Wesley Chapel is a true mission, to converting their vicar, right, to their own accounting system and budget. So Wesley Chapel will have their own, they're incorporating and have their own financials. And so Reverend Adrian Himes is no longer going to be represented on the diocesan staff expense line, rather in the form of the grant that goes to St. Paul's Wesley Chapel. It's been a while since we've been funding church plants through our budget, but currently in the year 2020, the year we're in right now, we're effectively funding $200,000 to Wesley Chapel Episcopal Church plant. And next year, this will be constant at $200,000 because they're doing very, very well, growing very, very quickly. And we anticipate both church plants to continue doing so in the next year. So over time, that will ramp down each year as their own pledge and plate income increases as they grow. So we're very excited about what's happening with the church plants. And then the remainder relates to the scheduled programs and events and communications and conventions that we've been doing, and those expenses themselves are pretty consistent. Here again, just to point out, the grant resources that we're turning back to the congregations total $826,000 of our diocesan budget. Much of that has not yet been determined, is there for us to navigate the year as needed in various ways, ranging from expertise to aid in distress to growth and evangelism, as well as the other areas of strategic ministry. Again, all of these details are included at a line item detail on page 35 through 37. So we encourage you to take a look at those. I also want to now, because our entity, you as a convention, also manage conference center. So the diocesan operating budget that I just spoke of, the $3.8 million of income and expenses, a balanced budget, is only a component of the combined. The DaySpring operating budget represents the other half, for roughly half, no, not even a half, and come on, total of $5.3 million combined. But it's an important half, and it's where we're sitting right now, so I shouldn't be messing that up. But that budget is it's a very, very different budget. It's a very, very different impact from a pandemic. If you think about what I've noticed with all of our congregations and how you've responded to a pandemic in your local online worship and giving and communities, there's a way to react and respond that unfortunately, a conference center that's transactional is not in the same way able to do. So we've been very busy managing our conference center just in the last 6 months. To give you an idea, this is a chart of our revenue over the last 8 years, starting at the bottom, which was 10 years ago, and seeing how we've grown each year, especially through phase 1 of our master plan. And then you see that big red circle, which is the impact of COVID-19 on our guest reservations. We have this year seen the reservations from our non-Episcopal guests drop by 60%. Out of necessity, and it's very appropriate that all of us are not gathering, but it has dramatic impact financially on the operations of the budget. Similarly, our own youth programs, from summer camp to many of the adult programs, we have wisely decided to cancel or have a hybrid fashion delivery in this year, similar to what we're doing right now. But that does impact the economics of the conference center. So looking at overall this year, we are down 60% the size of what we would normally be in any of the other years. So you ask, how do you budget then for next year? 4 or 5 months ago, we might have thought, oh, this will be a 2 or 3 month disruption. By 2021, we'll just be put back to having all of our same groups that come every year. We know now in August that that's probably not likely to be the case. It might be different. It might be delayed. It might speed up. There's still a fair amount of uncertainty related to that. So when we present an operating budget to council and to you, it reflects the reality of 2019, which is a good year baseline, telling you where we're projecting for 2020. And then we laid out 2 cases for 2021, an expected case and a worst case scenario. We do the worst case scenario to prove that we know and are able to manage our business, our conference center, to the levels that we are going to find ourselves being at. And it's not that we're just taking what we get, we're working actively to find alternative sources of revenue. But it's a constant matching of expenses to revenue, particularly in the form of our guest reservations. That is a day-to-day process. There are some fixed expenses that are pretty simple and easy to make a decision on, like, for example, property insurance during hurricane season is something that you don't have to worry, we'll be paying that. But a lot of what we do here is variable based on the guest and the activity. And so whether it's food, supplies, staff, there are managements on a variable basis that are done. And we're very, very, very grateful to have the experience that we have on our staff, particularly with Carla Odell as executive director in managing those expenses to the revenue. On the capital side, you may know, and we still are in the middle of a 10-year master plan for capital projects. We're sitting in phase 1. We're very excited about phase 2. We've even kicked it off with a transitional phase 1.5. And these projects do continue. They are long-term projects in nature. They are funded by donors, and those donations and payments on pledges continue to come. But what we will find in the coming years, not just 2021, but beyond, is a prudent matching of the fundraising with the pace of the projects, so that we don't find ourselves in a position that is not as secure and firm as we are right now. In no case would the capital projects be utilizing operational funds that sustain our diocesan staff or congregations. But in fact, similar to all prior years, an ongoing dollars coming from the DaySpring endowment and the capital apportionment will fund the ongoing capital maintenance, the base level capital maintenance that happens every year. And if needed, in our worst case scenario, an additional contingency amount should we need to. The rest is likely to be managed carefully in timing of the phases further on, but not committed to a certain timeline until we're sure of the funding for the whole rest of the phase. So we're in transitional mode on capital. We're very much focused on operations. DaySpring's development work has transitioned from just selling buildings and looking at all the things we can do with the facility to truly understanding the mission and the heart of what DaySpring is to our diocese, and articulating that to a community that really needs it right now. So whether we were articulating it in a grant application, which we received, or whether we're articulating it to prospect opportunities for alternative revenue, we're talking a lot about DaySpring and looking forward to more and sharing more with you in the report of the treasurer on October 17th. And so that brings me to the questions slide. And normally when in person, we relish the opportunity to see you raise your hands and stand up and ask questions. What I ask tonight is that, because it's not even just hearing your voice, we really care about questions, is that you call and email me or any of the others that are related to this process all the way up to the bishop with your questions prior to convention, because convention will look a lot like this. There's unfortunately not a lot of easy ways to stand in the hallway and ask questions in casual format. So they're very important, and we hope that you will ask them electronically, and we very much enjoy addressing them. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back to the bishop for a few closing words, and then I'll give instructions for the breakout rooms.
Okay. Thank you, Ann. I want to just say something that you might know, and if you don't know, it's important to know. The Diocese of Southwest Florida is one of the earliest dioceses in the Episcopal Church that is getting ready, gearing up for its convention. And so due to that, we are one of the earliest in the Episcopal Church and in the country dealing with the Zoom how-to, and you've all passed. So congratulate yourselves for the fine work that you've done, making sure that you're able to get the computer turned on that everybody can look at in the same room. And know that what we recognize in the bishop's staff is that we will be entertaining questions from other dioceses and the governance of the Episcopal Church on how did we do. And so I'm going to be paying close attention to what continues to function. And I thank all of the staff for creating such a good atmosphere for this time of convocation and voting rehearsal. I thank Phil Dean's staff for doing such good work and giving us great video. I mean, if you all could just see how this room looks, we feel important in here. So again, I know that you have one final piece as deaneries to accomplish this night, which is necessary for the work of the convention itself. The work that you will continue with this night goes into the workings of the 52nd Diocesan Convention. And so I'm going to pass this back to Ann in just a second, but I just want to say thank you so much, and God bless you for your willingness to do whatever it takes to make this happen. You've accomplished it. Thank you, Ann.
Excellent. Now this is the bonus round. We are going to break you out momentarily into 7 deaneries. Your dean will be facilitating the conversation. They've been trained and are ready for this role. So one of the first things they will do is unmute themselves, and then you can unmute yourselves. And your dean will be the chair for this very brief meeting. They will administer the vote of a deanery representative to diocesan council, and then you will vote, and then you will do whatever it is else you want to do as a deanery, and then you can leave from there. Just leave the meeting. You don't even have to come back here to the main room, although you can. I will stay here personally until 8:30 if you come back with any other questions. But if you feel free to depart right after your deanery, and then have at least one person email the result to Garland Pollard or convention@episcopalswfl.org. Again, send any questions, comments, suggestions that you have to that same email address, and we'll be repeating this whole thing again, even with all of these wires, on October 16th, on October 17th, Saturday. So with that, Martha, send them off into the breakout rooms, please.